Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Testimony Thursdays. And I'm your host, Dr. Jazz, physical therapist, child of God, all of that good stuff. And y'all, I have a very special guest today. Like, I'm so excited. We were just talking before I pressed record, and I said, let me press record right now because we were talking about some really good things. And I just love this lady. I cannot wait to talk about how we met because y'all know I love a story. I can't wait to talk about how we met and just our journey through to becoming a healthcare professional. So before we get started, let me read the Bible scripture that I have for her first, y'all, and then I'm gonna read her bio because y'all are gonna be like, yeah, this is this lady. So this is from Proverbs 14:1. A wise woman builds her home, but a foolish woman tears it down with her own hands. This reminds me of our guest, y'all, because when I say she does everything, like I literally don't even know how like she gets everything done. So let me read her bio. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. So LaShondra L. Holmes, um, MSOTOTRLPCES. Those are all the alphabets after her name. Y'all, that can already tell y'all she is on to something. Is a maternal health occupational therapist and owner of Occupational Transitions LLC, a mobile and virtual women's health practice serving the Rappahannock and Northern Virginia areas. Elle obtained her undergraduate degree in biology from the Stillman College and HBCU in Tuscaloosa. Did I say that right? Tuscaloosa, Alabama. In her master's degree in occupational therapy from Shenandoah University. Elle has also obtained certifications, advanced training as pelvic floor therapist, lactation and breastfeeding support, certified educator in infant massage, pregnancy and postpartum corrective exercise specialist, and postnatal yoga instructor. That's not it, y'all. Elle is the founder and 1/3 of the leadership team of occupational therapy practitioners for Black maternal health equity and currently volunteers with the Breastfeeding and Child Nutrition Foundation in Barbados. Oh my Lord. Y'all, having had her own practice with postpartum, having had her own experience with postpartum depression, Elle is passionate about supporting women to and through the postpartum period and believes that relationship and community is the organizing factor in which all development, social, cognitive, physical, and emotional occurs. A belief that serves as guiding principle for two of her community-based service offerings. Socially connected, spelled as so, like as you sew it, and ready, set, birth, and recover for moms who are in the up to 3-year postpartum period. Elle is a mother of one. In her spare time, she enjoys sewing, crocheting, reading, and honing her skills as a novice newborn and birth photographer. Oh my, I have so many questions, y'all. This is Elle. Thank y'all. Thank you, Elle, for joining. Thank y'all for listening. And oh my gosh, Elle, how do you feel? How do you talk to us? What's going on with that bio?
Look, I tell people, the bio is way more impressive than I am in person. So, but that bio just really speaks to who I am and what I do. And at the core of who I am is one, I am first. As you shared in the beginning, I'm a woman of God. I'm a mother, and I'm also just a practitioner, or just being a woman that loves to support women in general, particularly those who are transitioning or have transitioning into motherhood, and also narrowing that down to those who are in the up to 3-year postpartum period. Because I too had my own battles with postpartum depression. So a lot of the work that I do, a lot of the programs that I offer are really coming from my own personal experiences.
Thank you so much for sharing, Elle. Thank you for using your God-given gifts and helping people and serving people. That's what this podcast is all about, highlighting our testimonies. So thank you so much for sharing. And you left something off your bio as well, because, okay, let me back it up a little bit, y'all. So if y'all read my book, 2.76, like I talked about how I was one of the only Black students in my physical therapy program. So, I'm looking at other people, like other disciplines, and seeing, who's out there, like what other Black students are out there for me to connect with. And I met Misha. Misha is another occupational therapist who I need to get on my podcast. And she would like do my hair and stuff for me and all that good stuff. And then I don't even remember my first interaction with Elle, but I knew like I needed to be her friend. Like, this is one of those people where he's like, she's just so bright and her spirit, like, she really is just amazing. Like, you have to meet her in person, y'all. It's amazing. And I was like, no, she's my friend. Like, I have to be her friend. So we just connected on social media. But what she left off her bio is that she also completed the George program. So I talked about that in some of my previous podcasts, where basically it's a early intervention certificate program where you can learn about resources that are available for that Part C of early intervention, birth to 3 years of age. So she is, well equipped to help families and help children and to be a photographer. I'm like, this is just awesome. I'm so inspired. And I am going to start with a little icebreaker before I ask you a couple of questions. Well, this is a question too, but being a woman of God and just really relying on your faith, what is one story in the Bible that you look up to and that you kind of go back to when you're feeling down or you need some motivation? Particularly like a woman's story.
Actually, I'm glad you asked that question because my favorite book of the Bible is Esther. And one of the things that I love about Esther is the guidance that she had from her cousin Mordecai. So, being raised, I am from the Deep South, Alabama, Roll Tide. Um, just being raised in the Deep South, having that male guidance that had those males just as head of the households, just as strong presence in my life, that's something that just has always resonated with me. And just having that spiritual guidance from not only my own father, but like my grandfather and my uncles, as I went, navigated life, navigated relationships when it came time to make decisions, and also having the encouragement from them that, you know what, sometimes you have to stand. And in your standing, you may be the only one. And as the only one, you may have to carry the weight that comes with standing in the gap for something and for someone. And so I just always love in the book of Esther that she stood, even though she had her fear, we kind of all go through that questioning phase, but even through her fear, she still pushed past and she entered into the king's presence without his permission. And it's just those words that, it is for one such a time as this. And if I perish, then I will perish. And so when it comes to the work that I do, that is, again, something that has always guided me. Like, where is that needs gap? Sometimes I may be the only one showing up. I may be the only one that is bringing attention to an issue. And I may be the only one that seems to be combating any type of leadership or authority. And the story of Esther just continues to give me that courage to just say, you know what, that's okay. Because again, the work that I do is not about me. It's about the people that I am standing into the gap for. And every time that I stand with courage, just like in the book of Esther, it was a whole set of people, who were saved because of the courage that she had to just stand and buck societal norms. And so that is a book that I always go back to. That's a book that I constantly read, and that is just a book and a figure in biblical history that continues to guide a lot of decisions and the moves that I make. So the book of Esther.
Oh my gosh. Yes, we were just talking about that too. At our women's ministry, talking about Esther and Mordecai. And yeah, I'm always blown away, like, especially when I hear different pastors preach it. And it's like I'm getting a new revelation every time I go back and read it, and every time I hear that story again. So thank you for sharing that. And okay, another question. I feel like I get this question a lot too, but you know, when you become like an occupational therapist and you reach that goal, what makes you keep going to want to say, okay, now I want to be a photographer, or now, I want to start my own like supportive group, or now, I want to do a podcast or anything like that? Like, what makes you keep going, and how do you continue to meet those goals?
Absolutely. I think just because I just love people. I love talking to people. I love hearing people's stories. And if you listen to people in their story, you can identify what the need is. And that is something, again, that has just kind of guided me in choosing the type of programs and the kind of service that I offer. It's not that I'm sitting here thinking like, oh, I became an occupational therapist, now let me go and pursue this. it really has just been my interactions with other moms, hearing their stories, navigating the healthcare system, hearing their stories in terms of what services that went well for them, what services that were available, but wasn't necessarily the best experience, and what made it not a good experience, or what made it a good experience, or just something like, I wish I would have had that. And I will say, just as being a Black woman, being a Black birthing woman, a lot of the things that wasn't really discussed within our community in terms of the current service offerings that I have is like infant massage, um, home births, doulas, birth photography. While I've heard it a lot more here, because I am a transplant here in Virginia, I will say growing up in Alabama, those were things that I did not hear in terms of being a right for Black women. We always associated it with being a right for women who are non-Black, um, i.e., Caucasian women. And so we always kind of attributed those type of services as being for them, not necessarily for us. And so, me being here in the DMV, I feel like I was exposed to a lot of services that I did not necessarily hear about. I also took advantage of those services myself, and just how important it was to my own emotional and well-being as I was transitioning into motherhood. And I was just like, oh yeah, definitely got to make sure that my sisters are also aware of these services. One, not only aware, but they know how to access these services too. And also understand that this is also a right that's afforded to you as well as a birthing individual, not necessarily as a Black woman, not necessarily as a Black mom, but as a birthing individuals. And so um, that has just been, again, how I've decided, like, beyond traditional occupational therapy, what we get in our education programs, how I've decided to pursue like pelvic floor therapy. Birth photography was actually, again, birthed out of my personal experience because I wanted my mom to be at my birth. At the time I was married, and, my spouse, he was like, well, I just want this moment to be about us. And of course, I wanted to respect my husband, and because again, we are one, so regardless of how I felt and wanted my mom there, I had to respect him as the head of our household, but that still did not take away the guilt that I felt in terms of wanting my mom to be there. And of course, my mom and my dad, they both respected the decision that we made for it to be just he and I doing that birthing experience. But through birth photography, I was like, if I would have had a birth photographer or a videographer, at least I would have had an opportunity to kind of capture those moments and those memories to share with them, so they still would have been able to kind of be a part of that experience, even though they weren't physically there. So that's sort of how I kind of transitioned into birth photography.
That's awesome. And what I'm hearing is that, and you said this like previously, that you're feeling that need. You're looking at the gaps and you're saying, hey, like this is what is needed. Let me take on that role. And I feel like, it's a pattern with Black women. Like we look at things and then we're like, no, this needs to be fixed. And then we are the ones that's fixing it. And I feel like with that, sometimes we can get, burnt out. And sometimes we don't really take care of ourselves when we do things like that. And I remember that you posted something a couple of weeks ago where I believe you were having like a get together for women who were breastfeeding or lactation, something. And you were very transparent and you posted it and you're like, hey, this is my first time doing this. Um, Nobody showed up. And, I just kind of wanted to talk about that. And I feel the same way. Like, I feel like when people see me post different things like a podcast or my virtual book tour or books or anything, they're automatically thinking like it's sold out or so many people's going to attend. But a lot of the times it's only me and I'm recording it, or I'll have like one person show up. But I do realize that, whoever shows up, that's who it's meant for. And I realize I'm in a season of preparation and I have to be consistent and obedient to what God is telling me to do because, um, if you're faithful over little, then you're going to be faithful over what he's given us and all of it according to his riches and his glory. So, yeah, how do you kind of handle, seeing the need and then feeling the need and then sometimes not having the audience that you might have expected?
Well, one, I think that's it, just first managing your expectations. Because again, just because people aren't showing up does not mean that people aren't paying attention. We don't know what the reasons are as to why we didn't get the expected turnout that we were planning. But again, it does not mean that the seed was not planted. And even for those who have shown up, even if it's one, again, this is exponential. I am one on one to that person. That one person may be one to two to those that they're connected to. Those two may be 2 to 4 people that they're connected to. So just because we can't see the exponential growth of the work that we're doing does not mean that the impact is not there. So my belief is that if God gave you the mission and if God gave you the vision, that's who I'm answering to first. And so I know that if I do what it is that He has told me to do, He's going to do the rest. And so I have to forget that I have to carry that load to spread it out among the masses. No, I just need to do what He told me to do, and He's going to take it to the masses. And once I kind of accepted that, then that kind of took away a lot of the fear that we all have just putting ourselves out there. And it's normal fear, it's good fear, it isn't a bad fear or anything. But once I kind of accepted that, I was like, okay, we're gonna do this work. And then after I did it, and even though no one showed up, I felt good because then, believe it or not, you start getting comments of those who are like, oh my, I missed this. Oh, it was too late when I saw this. Please let me know when the next one is. So that's why I always encourage people, do the work. That's all you gotta do. Show up. Just show up. And I promise you, as you mentioned, those who are meant to get it, they will get it and they will find you. And again, we will never know the exponential impact of the work that we do. I don't care if 500 people show up, you're still not going to know the exponential impact of the work that you're doing. So I always tell people, do it anyway. And as I've heard, you sing your song for one as you would for 1,000. And that's enough for me. Like I said, I am honoring what God told me to do. As long as I'm doing that, I let the rest take care of itself.
Oh my goodness, that's so true. That's so true. And just being like a seed planter is just it's important because you never know who's watching and you never know who needs to hear your testimony. Um, and I feel like too, sometimes when people on the outside, when they're looking in, they may think, oh my goodness, like she has it all together, she's doing this, she's doing that. Or when you post something like a huge milestone that you met, it's like people don't realize how long it took you to get there. Like even for me, like I failed out of physical therapy school, and a lot of people don't know that story. And then they see my Instagram and they're like, oh my gosh, she's a physical therapist working in Hawaii. Like this is so cool. But they don't know how many years it took to get there. Or even like being featured like in the American Physical Therapy Association magazine, like I reached out to them months before that came out, and it was like a half a year before it came out. So I feel like people sometimes they give up quickly because they don't see like the immediate results. And it's like, no, like keep going, keep being a seed planter and keep, having those genuine intentions that you want to help and serve people. So that's really important. Thank you for touching on that. And then one more question, Elle, one more question. What does your day-to-day life look like? Like you working, seeing patients and being a mother, like how do you kind of balance all of those things?
That's a good question. I think for those who may be listening and or watching, I feel as mothers, even though we plan our day, I think the planning of the day is just something that gives us peace of mind. But once your feet hit the ground, it's like, you know what? I'm just gonna go with the flow. For me, just having a plan of what my day to day is going to look like just helps me to manage if I need to pivot. And so now when I wake up, one thing I just wake up is with an expectancy. I'm like, God, I don't know what you're gonna do in my life today, but I know I am waking up with expectancy that you're gonna do something great. So that's the first thing. The second thing though, just thinking out of my own habits and routines. So I am generally up around 5:30. I try to get in a workout in at least 3 to 4 days out of the week at that time. That is also a time my son is up and getting dressed. Once we get out the door, we're generally out by 7:30. I have to be to work at 8. So 8 when it comes to work. What we did not talk about though is even though I have my own mobile clinic practice, I also work for a hospital. And so I work for a local hospital system Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So that's where I am. That's actually probably what I have the greatest ability in my schedule because I know I'm there. I'm there from 8 to 3. Someone else is managing my schedule in terms of seeing patients. And so Monday, Wednesday, Friday is probably the most regimented where it's like planned. I know it's going to go. the way that it needs to go. When it comes to seeing patients in my own practice, I'm going to give myself at least 4 hours of treatment time or evaluation time. Because as a mobile clinic practice provider, I am traveling to these individuals' houses. And so for me, because I know I am having that time of not only travel, but also setup and including education once we get there and either do the evaluation or the treatment session, that allows me to kind of just plan for seeing 4 patients. And in my own clinic practice, I keep no more than 4 patients at a time. Because again, that allows me to work with that patient, meet those needs, get them to their goals without feeling stressed and overwhelmed. There are times where I only have one client that I'm seeing through my own mobile clinic practice. And so on those days, I am starting my day at 9 o'clock. And I am scheduling the appointments every 2 hours. So like 9, 11, 1, and 3. So I am back home by 5 o'clock. And then at 5 o'clock, have time with my son, dinner, and then whatever extracurricular activity that he has. And then, of course, the documentation occurs. Because even though I have my own mobile clinic practice and I am cash based, I still operate and do my documentation as if I am submitted to insurance because I feel like if I am doing that, if I get to the point where I decide I want to take insurance, then I'm already following, the guidelines to ensure that I'm getting reimbursed for services, particularly as we're all practitioners, whether we are working for a system or we're working for ourselves, as we're all kind of navigating this reimbursement system, these ongoing cuts that are happening. And as therapists, we definitely have to document to demonstrate a skilled service. So that's generally how my day goes. I see women who are early in their pregnancy. Again, I see women across the lifespan, but when I am working with those who are in the early postpartum period, as mentioned, up to 3 year postpartum period, because I want women to understand that while literature, it used to be, or I'm not going to say it used to be, I want them to understand that while clearance may come from their physician at 6 weeks to generally return to normal activities, that when it comes to postpartum recovery, it generally takes particularly the core and the pelvic floor muscles about 4 to 6 months to optimally heal. So that's why I work with women in the up to 3 year postpartum period because by the time they get to me, they've been dealing with symptoms for more than a year. And because these symptoms are common, they've accepted them as normal. And by the time they have sought me, it has just become too impactful in terms of their day to day. So that's generally it. So pregnancy, up to 3 year postpartum periods. If I am addressing breastfeeding concerns, I'm really there to one, either provide education, kind of identify what their routine is in terms of breastfeeding. I am looking at positioning of both the mother and the baby. If there's anything that's medically going on in terms of like engorgement or mastitis, I will then refer out to an IBCLC. So right now I am working on my clinical hours to be able to sit for the IBCLC exam. So that's why my bio said lactation and breastfeeding support and education. So I definitely understand what's within my scope as an occupational therapist who is working toward IBCLC. And so in that space, I am just looking to see what is currently happening so that I can then say, okay, this is something that I can address right now, or I definitely need to refer you out to an IBCLC for higher level of care. So that's pretty much how my day goes.
Thank you for sharing that. IBLC, that's International Breast.
Board certified lactation consultant.
Yes, yes. Okay. I remember I did a continuing education course, but I forgot that what it stood for. Oh my goodness. Yes. I mean, that's a lot to juggle. It's a lot going on. But I loved how you talked about, you're doing the documentation as if you were to accept insurance because I learned, how you do anything is how you do everything.
Yes.
You're already, building those healthy habits. That's going to carry over and you're going to have an overflow of, just being organized, being detailed with all of those great things. So thank you so much for sharing, Elle. We're definitely gonna have to do a part two. Like, I feel like I have 1,000 more questions, but we're coming to an end. And how we end every episode of Testimony Thursdays is talking about a test that we went through that led to a testimony, or a test that we're currently going through that's going to lead to a testimony. So, can you speak on that?
Absolutely. So we were just talking about this before we started recording. And as I mentioned, I tell people sometimes our test that we go through necessarily isn't for us, even though it happened to us. So for me, I had applied to occupational therapy school before I even had known about my acceptance. I had left my job also. So I was a VA employee. So OT is a second career for me. And unfortunately, there was infidelity in my marriage. And so you can imagine how I was processing that. So now fear has set in because, like, oh my goodness, I left my job. And I don't even know if I got into OT school, but one of the first things that I said after finding out that information is that, you know what, God, no matter how the wind blows, I know you're going to take care of me. And I would say about a month after that, I got my acceptance letter that I had been accepted into Shenandoah University. So I didn't even have time to really mourn the change in my marriage and unfortunately the loss of my marriage because now I had signed my name into $60,000 of student loan to be able to go to school. And emotionally, was it challenging? Absolutely, it was. So every day, it was a constant prayer like, God, you got me here. This is an opportunity that you have granted to me. So one thing I'm going to do is definitely lean heavy into you while I'm going through this process. And I will tell you, looking back, I really don't know how. I know how I made it through, but I really don't know how I made it through. Because again, that is a life changing experience. And also being a mother, my son was like 4 at that time. So at 4, kids also have their own needs, and just being able to juggle school, motherhood, and still even being a wife because you're trying to process like, what am I going to do with this marriage? I'm going to stay in this marriage. But again, I ask God for daily strength. And as the word says, our God would be our daily bread. And every day, every day it was new mercies. And then when it came time to study for the board exam, I was like, all right, God, we made it through 2.5 years of school. So now we're getting ready to take this board exam. And I was real upfront with God. I was just like, listen, I'm not trying to do this more than once. Like emotionally, at that time I was just so emotionally drained and fatigued that I just had to be real direct. I'm not doing this more than once. And God honored that prayer for me. And so I passed my exam. And so through going through school, it was a story that I often shared and a story that I continue to share. And it isn't anything to bring a negative light to my ex-husband because as I told him, I don't define you by what you did. It just happened, life happens. But I also shared that story because again, I just wanted to encourage individuals that even though you have something that a life-changing experience, something that's definitely testing your faith in God, is that you continue to push through. And I promise you, God is going to honor that which He promised to you. And even before that came out, when I was applying to OT schools, I tried to apply to like 4 or 5 schools. God kept sending me to Shenandoah. And I was like, nope, I'm going to do 4 or 5 schools. I'm trying to up my chances to get in. And God told me, no, this is where you are going. And so when all of that happened, again, I stood on His promise and I said, you know what, God, you told me this is where I need to go. You told me this is what you're going to do for me. And He did exactly what He told me He was going to do. So sometimes God will put us in situations, just not that He needs to do it, but sometimes He puts us in those situations so that He can continue to remind us of just who He is. And having gone through that experience, having made it through school, that's why I say every day I just wake up with expectancy to say, God, you're going to do something supernatural in my life. I don't know what it is, but again, I got this expectancy that you're going to do it. And for me, supernatural doesn't have to be anything big or anything major. Sometimes it can be just a little smell that comes across that causes me to kind of just slow down and enjoy the moment. It could be just looking at my son and seeing that dimple when he smiles at me to let me know, you know what, this is worth it. So when I say, God, you're going to do something supernatural, it is any good thing that God has allowed me to experience in my day-to-day living that I count as something supernatural. So That is my test. That was my test. That is my testimony. And I hope that what I shared is encouraging someone else to keep pushing through.
Oh my goodness, Elle. This episode might have been for me. I could talk to you all day. Like literally, I'm always blown away by my guests on the podcast. And just y'all agreeing to, be on this podcast with me. It's like I never get any pushback. I am gonna get Symphony on here too. I don't know if you know Oh no, that
Yeah.
you know
Yeah,
Symphony?
she was under me. Yeah.
Okay, yes, I had Dominique on here, and I love how we are all connected. But thank you so much for sharing. My testimony definitely is this toothache that I have right now that's having my face a little swole. Y'all don't look at it, but
She is gorgeous. She is still gorgeous. She is still gorgeous.
thank you so much, Elle, for joining. I cannot wait to go back and listen to this podcast episode because it's very motivating. And please tell the people where they can find you and support you.
Sure. I primarily hang out on Instagram in terms of the things that I am doing as a practitioner. So that is LELLE underscore the pelvic health underscore OT. So while I'm going to get better with being more active on social media. That is definitely one of my goals. But my hope is that I'll be able to share a little bit more with you all in terms of birth photography. So if you are in the DMV area, I am looking to partner with two families to offer Fresh 48 and also to do birth photography at the end of the year. So if y'all know anybody that's expecting November, into November to December, let them know. And of course, this is free. So again, and it is comes with no obligation. So
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited for those two families. I know that work is going to be awesome. And I'm so proud of you, Elle. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Like, thank you for sharing your testimony. And yeah, I am honored to just be a part of your community and continue to support you. And yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for listening to another episode of Testimony Thursdays. Please follow us on Testimony Thursdays on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you all next week.